What's been announced from the annual general meeting right now, and still fluid, a lot of more statements coming in, but nonetheless, what have you picked up? What's the most important?
Well, first, let me talk a bit on the line that he's made, that our Reliance Communication and Rel Jio are in advanced talks for spectrum sharing. Just to remind our viewers, spectrum sharing is basically possible between two operators who have the same frequency band in a particular circle, which means if both Rel Jio and Reliance Communication have spectrum in Mumbai, they have the same 800 megahertz spectrum, then only sharing is possible between the two. So this is the key guideline of spectrum sharing, and Anil Ambani has indicated that he's in advanced talks with Rel Jio for spectrum sharing. Now, between the two, the only possibility is in the 800 megahertz band, where Rel Jio has spectrum in 10 circles, while Reliance Communication has spectrum in 22 circles. Now, for spectrum sharing, both of them need to have a presence in that circle. So spectrum sharing is at best possible only in 10 circles. So that's the key point number one. Secondly, for spectrum sharing, you also need to have spectrum which is liberalized. Now, liberalized means not something which is given to you at administered prices way back and lower prices. You have to have paid a market determined price. So Rel Jio has acquired it recently, so their spectrum is liberalized. But Reliance Communications spectrum has been administered, which means for spectrum sharing with any party, Reliance Communication would need to liberalize the spectrum. So that's point number two. So point one is at best 10 circles. Point number two, Reliance Communication will have to make a payout for liberalizing the spectrum. Now the 10 circles where it's common, it's an overlap between the two. So quickly, it's Mumbai, Haryana, Madhya Pradesh, UP East, Assam, Bihar, Himachal Pradesh, Northeast, Orissa and J&K. Now if you look at these, the big ones only appear to be Mumbai, Haryana and Madhya Pradesh. All the others are your category C circles, which means they basically don't contribute as much. But that said, it's a positive for both the entities. It's a positive for Rel Jio because Rel Jio only has a pan-India presence in a band called 2300 megahertz band, which is not that great for data as well as voice. It's fine for data, but it's not going to give you seamless service for voice, which means that Reliance Jio would need a better quality spectrum, say 1800, say a 800, to also provide that service, which is why they need to tie up. So yes, they have a pan-India presence, but not in the ideal spectrum. Internationally also, if you see, not too many people have done 4G launches in 2300 megahertz, which is why Rel Jio needs to tie up to give you a better quality service. For Reliance Communication, we know their woes. They have debt of 35,000 crore, 40,000 crore. You know they've been losing market share. So they are trying to strike up a deal. Not just this, if you remember, even sometime back they told us that they're in exclusive talks with Sistema Sham for a merger as well. So they're trying to utilize their spectrum and get some money to lower their debt. So net-net, right now, it's only in advanced stages of negotiation, and also the final notification on spectrum sharing is still not out from the Department of Telecommunication. The Cabinet has given its approval, in principle not, but we're still awaiting the final notification. But that said, it's a positive for both Rel Jio, for Reliance Communication as well.
So net-net, is there any help in terms of its balance sheet as well?
Well, yes, if you strike up a deal, they will get some money. It should be an arm's length transaction between the two, so it will be a positive. So it will help Reliance Communication get some money, pay down their debt, and for Rel Jio, it will help in getting a better getting some more spectrum, which will help getting it better spectrum.
Thanks a lot for giving us all those details, and to further detail that analysis, we're joined by Nitin Soni of Fitch Ratings, who joins us on the phone line. Thanks a lot, Nitin, for joining us. First up, what do you make of the news that has just come in, or the comments that have come in from the AGM of ADAG?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. So this is on expected lines, and we have been saying that Jio and Arcom's spectrum sharing or trading is very likely, and it's not very surprising that they have indicated that they are in advanced stages of sharing their 800 megahertz band. Remember, Arcom is the only one which has contiguous spectrum on a pan-India basis in 800. Jio has 10 circles. And Jio, it is very important for Jio to access that contiguous 800 megahertz spectrum in the overlapping 10 circles where Jio does not have access to that kind of a spectrum. Credit positive for Arcom, given that it has about $6 billion of net debt on its balance sheet. It's rated BB-, and it will give some cash inflow for Arcom in terms of both, some spectrum sharing and also the monetization of Infratel ownership.
Okay.
And that should relieve some balance sheet pressure.
How much of pressure could Reliance Communications see of easing in terms of their balance sheet because of this, a potential?
And it's very difficult to give a number on spectrum sharing because that's something which is negotiated between these two companies. But it could be a large amount and only a combination of monetization can relieve pressure because and I believe the monetization number on Infratel would be much larger because if they are selling a substantial stake in Infratel, and Infratel is actually a significant part of their overall EBITDA generation. I think Infratel is about easily 40 to 45% of their EBITDA, and that would be a significant amount.
Okay. Hi Nitin, afternoon. This is Reema here. You indicated right now Reliance Communications rating for y'all is BB-. If they do actually sign this spectrum sharing with Reliance Jio, would it then result in you upgrading your rating on Reliance Communication, or would it take more than that?
Yeah, so we have a guidance of 4 times on their net debt to EBITDA, and if it falls below 4 times as a result of the monetization of these assets, then there is a possibility that we can upgrade the ratings. Right now, the ratio is about 4.5 or 4.6 times. So depending on what is the number they are going to realize from these sale of assets and spectrum sharing, yeah, then it could a possibility to upgrade the ratings.
Okay, so which means if it's currently just at 4.5 or 4.6 and if it comes down to below 4, there is a possibility of its ratings upgrade. Do you think spectrum sharing would do it? Give us a sense of how much money could Reliance Communications get because of the spectrum sharing, keeping in mind that they will have to liberalize part of their spectrum. Any ballpark?
Yeah, so no, it's very difficult for me to quantify this number because they will have to pay something to the government to liberalize the spectrum as well. And also, I would believe evidence from their earlier sharing with Jio that they could have some kind of infrastructure sharing in lieu of this spectrum sharing as well. So there could be a combination of arrangements with Jio on this spectrum sharing. So I'm not really sure whether there would be any actual money inflow because of the spectrum sharing. So this will be overall positive for the company in general, but I'm not really sure what kind of money they will generate from this. But Infratel will be significant. Infratel is separately, monetization of tower assets will be significant.
Okay. All right. Fair enough, Nitin. We leave it on that note. And Reema for joining in and taking us through the news on Reliance Communications. So the two key points which we have to work with will, one, be the advanced stage of discussions to finalize spectrum sharing with Rel Jio, and secondly, will monetize 95% stake in Rel Infratel. Seems like telecom is really the toast of today's trading session, with Idea up around 5% Bharti Airtel because there was a Bank of America Merrill Lynch favorable report on that company, and now we have Reliance Communication which is spiking up as well. Time for a break now, but up next we'll speak to State Bank of Travancore, which has